travel, you might worry about somebody stealing your luggage, but maybe not so much about your data. Author and podcast host Justin Daniels joins us now. Listen, it's a real thing. First of all, thank you so much for joining us. I appreciate it. What are some examples of what we should be concerned about when we're traveling?
Some good examples of what we should be considering is, number one, when you're at a restaurant and, hey, can you pay by a credit card mobily, and can we have your email? Think twice about whether or not you want to give an organization you're not familiar with your email. Another one is when you travel to places and it's a deal for a condo last minute that looks too good to be true, it probably is. Another area you need to be thinking about is just when you're going through passports and other places, making sure you have your passport, understanding what kind of data is going to be collected, particularly when you're traveling internationally. It's really important because if you're giving away your email address in places outside the country, you really don't know where that information is going, what it's being used for, and how that could be an issue for you.
When we look at email addresses, it's one thing. When we look at things like biometrics, it's another. And in some cases, that can save us a lot of time if we're coming back into the country, for example, or traveling in general. But it also is a privacy risk as well. How do we find or manage that balance in life where we take advantage of the convenience, perhaps, but at the risk of giving up some of our privacy?
So one idea that I can share is you might even want to set up like an email address. So you have your main email where you communicate with people, but you set up like another Gmail account that you use for having to log in or provide certain information so that that email address you're using isn't something that really leads to any of your personal information. As it relates to biometric information, for example, with the airlines, if you're allowed to opt out, I typically opt out because I really don't want them to have that information. And so you really need to be understanding of what your rights are in instances where you can opt in or opt out of something. And you may want to say, hey, I really don't want to do this, instead of the default being, hey, I'll just do it, not think twice about it. It's like when you leave and you lock the doors, now you kind of have to lock the doors to your digital identity.
It's such a great point. And Justin, you're a data privacy advisor, so you get it. Just ballpark it, rough ballpark. How much of a percentage of people do you think realize, though, that you can opt out of these things? Because I think most people just think that if we're going to go along with it, we go along with it.
Using my back of the envelope, I'd say 50% or less. And I'll give you a great example. I was at an outdoor mall and I watched someone go to one of those digital kiosks. And, they take a picture of you and you're wearing like a cool hat or whatever. And in order to get the picture and download it, you have to give them your cell phone. And I watched a family with a kid just give them the cell phone. And there's no notice as to what they do with that information. And your cell phone is really personal to you. And that's just a great example of how people give away precious personal information to get something without even thinking about it.
Yeah, so last thing I'll ask you is just a piece of advice for people who maybe they don't think that way, the way that you just explained it. Maybe they're just like, hey, it's just a cool picture with a funny hat on, and if they have my cell phone, fine. Everybody else seems to have my information anyway. What are, I guess, the ways that we can best make sure, aside from just not our number or email to anybody, that we're safe, but we can still enjoy life at the same time?
So really what we're talking about is how do we find that right balance? And I think where it starts is education, is understanding, hey, when I go out to the restaurant and they want me to hit a button where if I give them my email, they'll give me a receipt electronically, do I want to do that? And really understanding in what instances do I want to give out my personal information, and one other instances like, hey, I really don't want that product or service. We're so inured to want that convenience that we need to be thinking differently about, hey, I just don't leave the doors unlocked when I go vacation. And now I need to be thinking, hey, how am I going to lock the doors and be selective when I unlock that digital door to my personal information?
Yeah, that really brings it home when you talk about that and you make the reference to the door in your house. You're never going to leave that one open, but you're right. You leave that digital door open all the time. I appreciate you joining us this morning. Thank you so much for the advice.
Have a great day.
All right.